What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So this is the juice from the Harris chain of lakes for the second stop on the Major League Fishing Pro circuit. So if you're not familiar with the juice, this is a series. It's presented by Fish USA. So all this tackle that I'm about to go over is available at fishusa.com. So check the description down below and there'll be direct links right to Fish USA's store where you're able to purchase this tackle. They got the job done here on the Harris chain for the second stop. Weigh-in's still going on, so I'm not sure where I'm going to finish up, but I had a good event, made day 3 looking like a top 40 finish anyway, so can't complain. Good event, good check. So let's jump in, check out all the rods, reels, lines, baits, all that good stuff that I used this week on the Harris chain. Okay, let's start over here. We're just going right into it. We literally just pulled the boat out of the water after fishing all day, so you have to forgive me. The boat's a little bit of a mess. I got some backlashed reels, I got some broken off stuff. I mean, it's a total mess, but I'm gonna go through and tell you what I caught all my fish on. So this right here, this is a punching rod. I caught absolutely no fish this week on it, but I had it on the deck. I got it on the favorite Rush 7.7 heavy. It's the Zach Bird Signature Series rod. It's a pretty good heavy flipping punching rod, but like I said, didn't catch any fish on it, so we're skipping over that one. Moving on here, this guy here, this was my little Carolina rig with a little finesse worm on the back. So this is the favorite Hex 7'6" heavy. I got 20-pound Seaguar Tatsu main line. Come down here, this is where it gets interesting. So I like to run a little peg on my Carolina rig. So I got an Epic Tungsten football peg right there. And then I got an Epic Tungsten Carolina rig barrel weight. That's a 3/4 ounce. And then I got 2 beads, a swivel. And then after the swivel, I went with 15-pound Seaguar Tatsu down to my hook. This is a Trokar TK 100 4/0. Just a standard round bend hook right there, and I was just adding a couple different various finesse worms on there, just dragging this around shell beds. So I fished, I don't know, 2 or 3 different shell beds each day and was able to catch a couple of the fish I weighed in on the Carolina rig, which is pretty rare. You know, I don't throw a Carolina rig a whole lot. I fish pretty fast, so Carolina rig's a pretty slow bait, but it did add a few fish to the box this week on the Harris chain. All right, moving down the list. Like I said, we got a tangled mess here. All right, next up is your Florida staple. You can't go to Florida and not throw a speed worm. So I had a big speed worm on the deck. Same rod, the favorite Hex 7.6 heavy, 20-pound Seaguar Tatsu. Running that down to here, I was throwing a 1/4 ounce Epic Tungsten flipping weight. So the flipping weight's a little different shape than the worm weight. It's just a little more compact, a little rounder, so I went with that. Of course, you got to peg it. But you get down here, a lot of guys always ask, you know, what hook to throw with that big Magnum speed worm. This hook right here is the best hook I've ever found. You know, everyone knows this hook right here as their flipping hook. This is the Trokar TK 130 flipping hook, but this is actually the 6/0 size. So it's a big giant hook. You can rig up that big speed worm and you're able to land those fish. So I actually caught my biggest fish today on day 3 of the tournament on the speed worm right here. Favorite Soleus XCS reel, 8.1-to-1 gear ratio. You know, I wanted a fast gear ratio, so when I do get a bite, I can hook that fish and catch up to him. But it was very hard because I had to train myself and really watch myself and wind very slow, because you could wind a speed worm too fast. So I had to pay attention to that, but it got the job done. here, let's see, we got a swim jig. So this is the favorite Pro Series 7'6" heavy. I got 50-pound Seaguar Smackdown braid on here tied to a swim jig. This I pulled out of the rod box this morning. I did things a little bit different this morning and looked for a shad spawn. Never had a sniff on the swim jig, but it was on the deck. Next up, we have a flipping rod. Again, didn't even get spooled up today. Never even unhooked it off the reel. Got no work. Also, we have another bait that did nothing. That's just your standard fluke. I got that rigged up on a Trocar TK 100 as well, but in a 5/0 size. And again, I was throwing this around the shad spawn this morning. I had one fish blow up on it and missed them, but again, didn't put anything in the boat. So we're moving on down the list. This guy right here, this was the heavy hitter of the week, as usual. If you guys know me, have watched my videos before, you know I'm a chatterbait guy. I throw that chatterbait anytime there's grass or anytime the fish are feeding on shad. So of course I was throwing the Z-Man jackhammer, 1/2 ounce. I think this one's called some kind of shad, Clearwater shad or something like that. You guys know me. You're throwing this on the favorite Hex, 7'5", medium heavy, 15-pound Seaguar Invisex fluorocarbon. Favorite Soleus XCS, 7.3-to-1 gear ratio. That is my absolute favorite chatterbait setup right there, and I throw this all over the country and it gets the job done. Catches a lot of big fish, and it caught a lot of key fish for me this week on the Harris chain. All right, so we finished up this side. Let's head over to this side, show you a couple more key heavy hitters for the week. That would be this guy right here, a jerkbait. You know, a jerkbait is killer when they're feeding on shad. The fish were keying on shad very heavily this week, especially in the areas I was fishing. So I was throwing just a Megabass Vision 110 jerkbait, a couple different colors. You know, throwing a gold one, throwing a silver one. I broke a couple off today, so I tied on this one here. I think this is a threadfin shad killer. But the whole key thing about my jerkbait setup this week was the rod. You know, if you guys have watched me previously, most of the time I'm throwing a jerkbait on that favorite Pro Series 7' medium heavy. But this week I changed things up and went to a 7'2" medium heavy Hex. Okay, so it's a little bit longer, but it's a little bit faster. So I was using the Hex rod this week because I was fishing this bait around grass, and whenever that jerkbait would get hung up in grass, I needed that little bit faster tip on the Hex to be able to snap it and rip it out of that grass and not get balled up. If you throw a little bit more moderate rod like the Pro Series, the rod's not fast enough to yank it out of that grass, and you just end up winding in the grass. So I used the Hex this week to get that job done. So I was throwing 12-pound Seaguar Abrazex. I wanted 12-pound line on my jerkbait just to help it get a little bit deeper when I was fishing around some of that deeper grass and on the shell beds on the outside edge of the grass. Yeah, 12-pound Seaguar Abrazex, and it got the job done. I probably caught at least half of the fish I weighed in on a jerkbait this week. So, like I said, a couple different jerkbaits. Here was another one, had the same setup, but I actually backlashed it. So yes, it happens to everybody. We backlash and lose baits and everything. Nothing you can do about it. It's part of the game. All right, here's the other. This is probably my third key player of the week, and that was just a small crankbait. So I basically relied on one 100-yard stretch of grass, caught a bulk of my fish out of. So they were getting highly pressured. You know, locals were fishing there. They've been fished for in the past. There's been a bunch of tournaments here. I've fished for them for 3 days now. So I wanted something a little bit different. And I rigged this up after day one of the tournament. It was just a little crankbait. I wanted a silent crankbait. So I went with this right here. This is a Bagley B1. It's a balsa crankbait. It's silent, makes no noise. It's very buoyant, so you can keep it over top of that grass, and you're able to snap it out of that grass a little bit and catch those fish on a reaction strike. So I went with the silver foil kettler, because those fish were feeding on real small shad, and I wanted that foil to just to flash a little bit when I pop it. I was throwing this one on the Favorite Pro Series 7-foot medium heavy. Like I said, this is usually my jerkbait rod, but I went with this on the crankbait this week, small little crankbait, and I caught a couple key fish each day on this little crankbait right here. I was throwing this on 15-pound Seaguar InvizX fluorocarbon. I wanted that little bit heavier line than usual on a crankbait because I was trying to keep it above the grass. You know, I didn't want this bait to dive too deep. I was trying to keep it up above that grass and just tick the top of it and pop it and cause that reaction strike for those fish that were looking up out of that grass and feeding on bait fish. All right, next up we got a spinnerbait. This was again just for this morning when I was looking for a shad spawn. I had one fish roll on it this morning, no bites, but I was throwing that on the Favorite Rush series. This is the other Zach Burge Signature Series rod, a 7'3" medium heavy. It's a perfect little spinnerbait rod. 17-pound Seaguar InvizX fluorocarbon and a Favorite Soleus XCS 7.3 to 1. You know, spinnerbait, you want a little bit slower reel so you can keep it down. Spinnerbaits like to rise up in the water when you're winding, so you want to keep it down. Next up, we got a couple traps. Again, I don't think I caught any fish in the tournament on these two, but these were here for my shell beds. You know, I had a couple shell beds where I would drag a Carolina rig and then I would rotate in a trap just to see if any fish were looking to react or needed a little commotion for them to fire. So I had two different traps on here. I had a one knocker and then a regular rattle just to vary those. But throw my traps on this rod right here. This is the Favorite Defender series, 7'5" medium heavy. You know, it's a long rod. You can make real long casts and move a lot of line when you kind of yo-yo this bait. So I was able to do that. Identical setups, Favorite Soleus XCS 7.3 to 1 gear ratio reels, 15-pound Seaguar InvizX fluorocarbon. That's my trap setup. Catch them on that all over the country as well. But like I said, I don't think I weighed in any fish on the trap, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. Well guys, I think that's it. That's everything. So I appreciate you guys watching this video. If you haven't, go back and watch my practice video, watch my tournament video, let me know what you think. And maybe you might see a couple big fish get caught in that, so you might want to go back and check that out. But hopefully you guys have watched this entire video. Appreciate you guys watching. Leave me any likes, comments down below. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and stay tuned. We'll see you guys next time. We got a bunch more tournaments coming up here quick. You know, the season's rolling quick, so there's gonna be a bunch more content coming soon. So I appreciate you guys, and we'll see you then.